Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. All right, today we are going to start off a little bit by, looking at the Vikings and whatnot a little bit more as a unit, as a team, a little zoomed out, as opposed to yesterday looking at the individual players and whatnot. I do want to start with a couple things here, news and notes-y related. Let's start with the, I guess, semi-big news. I don't know how big a news it is, but it feels good. Jaireed Reed's practicing. They opened up his 21-day window, which is awesome. The only reason I downplay that slightly is because if you look at his timeline to return, it looks like he's probably going to return when we expected him to, depending on when you expected him to. Apparently, he is not going to play this week, so that has been squashed, which makes sense. I mean, they just opened up his window. Not even like to start the week. It was, toward the end of the week, and, Apparently, not only that, it's somewhat of a long shot-ish that he plays next week for Thanksgiving. Let's, for the sake of somewhat optimism, call it 50-50. But if he does not play in that game, he's starting early December, which is, I don't want to say late, but let's just say at the back end of the window that he was kind of supposed to return in. So it's exciting news. It's great that he's back. It's great to see him practicing. All that stuff is cool, but it's also just kind of, it's just how it was supposed to go anyways. Let me read this little snippet here just so you know I'm not just making random crap up. Bill Huber over at Sports Illustrated says, Reed, who had surgery to repair the collarbone as well as an injured foot, is not going to play on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings, and it might be a big ask for him to be ready for Thanksgiving against Detroit on Thursday. And then he says, then again, quote, I think once they clear him, he's going to be ready to roll, pass game coordinator Jason Vrabel said on Thursday. He's as hungry as they come right now. It's been difficult for him, but the foot's great and the shoulder's working back, and he's a dog, so I just can't wait to get him back out on the field. I don't know that adds anything necessarily, but again, let's call it optimism, and let's say he's going to be out there for Detroit. I'm ready for it. Let's frickin' do it, folks. Let's just rip through the rest of this article, might as well, because it kind of covers everything anywho. Again, compliment to Bill Huber. I want to make sure to clarify that. I don't know why I'm being so randomly stupid about it. I just saw somebody got yelled at or scolded for not citing one of the beat writers, which I will say I thought was a little bit funny. It was Schneidman. I like Schneidman. He does a good job and all that over at The Athletic, but I think it was Rob Westerman or something made a little graphic which kind of quoted Schneidman. It pulled from his article, and he didn't cite it, and so he scolded him for it or whatever. But the only thing I could think is it's a little funny to take ownership of something that is essentially you just quoting somebody else. You know what I mean? I mean, you did quote them and cite them, I guess, but it's weird to be like the middleman but expect like so much credit for stuff, Like, Matt LaFleur said, hi, Steve, and then I copy and paste that, and you're like, hey, that's my quote. It's like, no, that was Matt LaFleur's quote, actually, but okay. It's like people on YouTube that will strike down content of, like, film breakdown. It's not even like a film breakdown. It's like they took a snippet of the film and then put it on YouTube, and then you took that, and they're like, hey, that's mine. It's like, no, actually, that is the NCAA's. And you stole it, which I don't think you're actually allowed to do, and put it on YouTube, and now you're going to be a douche about it? Okay, sure. The same people that if the NCAA went and tried to take yours down, it's fair use, how dare you? Bro, you're stealing stuff, I'm stealing your stuff, just shut up. Didn't write a research paper on how to cure cancer, okay? You just said, here's what Jim said. Okay, great. He also says Packers running back Josh Jacobs practiced for a second consecutive day on Friday, further raising the possibility he'll be in the lineup for Sunday's game against the Vikings. Quote, I would say he'll be limited, and we're just going to see what he can do, Coach Matt LaFleur said before practice. Just talking to him, he's feeling pretty good, so we'll see when we get out there. Five players did not practice on Wednesday. Jacobs, Quay Walker, Carl Brooks, Nate Hobbs, and Savion Williams. Jacobs and Williams returned on Thursday. On Friday, Williams did not go out for the start of practice, nor did Walker, Brooks, or Hobbs. So there you go. What else? I just want to real quick touch on some Matthew Golden things that I've seen pop up. Obviously, nobody's satisfied or content with the direction or the way that things are going with that whole situation with Matthew Golden. Two things that I've seen come up. One of them I've seen many times, and I'm just genuinely kind of confused by it. I don't know. I don't know where these things originate, but I'll see it once and kind of roll my eyes, and then I'll see it a second and third time, and it's like, what are you guys talking about? People, there must have been some stat that came out. Maybe there's a new one again. I mean, it's pointing to the same thing we saw a long time ago, but it was Matthew Golden is one of the best in terms of separation. We've seen this before. Again, I'm guessing either it popped up again or there's a new updated thing. The weird thing I don't understand is the commentary is Matthew Golden is one of the best at separating. The only thing I can conclude is Matt LaFleur is an idiot. And I'm trying to rationalize this. And I'm it's like, okay, so Matt LaFleur is putting him on the field, right? So of his wide receiver options, he says, I want Golden out there. And that is happening. I know there haven't been a ton of options due to injury and whatnot, but, I mean, he does have the second most snaps of any of our wide receivers. So it's not as though he's being buried on the depth chart. He also has the second most targets, second most receptions, second most yards. So, again, I understand. Christian Watson's played 4 games, for example, half of what Golden has. I get all that. I'm just saying he has been a part of the offense, whether you believe it or not. So he's choosing to put him on the field. He's telling him what routes to run. The routes are getting him open. And that's an important distinction because, yes, sometimes it's about the receiver getting open, but sometimes you run routes that are not really intended to get open. It's intended to get somebody else open. And if he's running a lot of those routes, he wouldn't have the statistics that he has about getting open. I also think that statistic by itself is also probably a lot of nonsense. I would love to see exactly how they're tracking that. First of all, almost never do they actually track it unless the ball is thrown to them. And then again, usually like running backs and tight ends are very high in that because they're thrown at behind the line of scrimmage where there's basically no defenders around, whatever. But so I'm skeptical of the statistic to begin with. But leaving that part aside, assuming it's 100% true, he's open all the time. How do we say Matt LaFleur is putting him on the field, telling him what routes to run, the routes are getting him open, and the ball isn't going to him because Matt LaFleur? And the only response I get back is the same argument we had a long time ago, and that's progressions, which is kind of a silly argument, except to say here is a possibility in terms of how these things that seem entirely incompatible could actually be compatible. It's not to say for sure it's happening, obviously, because nobody has any idea if it's happening. Again, the best you can do is say, although it seems entirely incompatible, to blame Matt LaFleur for this is one possibility of how it could be happening. And the problem, one of the big problems I have with that is nobody is the number 4 in a progression every single time. They all take turns. You think Romeo Doubs is the number 1 read every play? Of course he's not. And Golden and Wicks and Watson and all they all take turns in these things. Right, depending on the specific thing. So you would need actual details to be able to point these things out. But even acknowledging that that's a possibility, blaming Matt LaFleur as though you know, because there is a hypothetical possibility in which it could be true, seems so dishonest and stupid to me. Just because there is a possibility that it could be happening doesn't mean it is happening. I shouldn't have to say that out loud, right? It might be Matt LaFleur's fault. It might be Jordan Love's fault. It might be Matthew Golden's fault. It's probably some combination of all those things, right? I even had somebody argue with me about the fact that it's like, well, If Matt LaFleur has him on longer developing routes and the offensive line is terrible, then technically it is Matt LaFleur's fault. No, then it would be the offensive line's fault, actually. Like, we're so determined to blame Matt LaFleur for all this bullcrap. And again, I just went back and looked at, for the billionth time, I went back and looked at one play. And in that play, Matt LaFleur had time. The play was clearly designed for Matthew Golden. And Jordan never, for a second, did anything other than throw it to Musgrave. And that's the play in which he fumbled. That play should never have gone to Musgrave. There's no reason to throw it to Musgrave whatsoever. He wasn't even that open. You are not under pressure. Get to Golden. Never got there. Never decided to do it. Now, again, I'm not blaming Jordan because I don't think it's one thing. I think it's probably a lot of things. I think Golden bears some responsibility, just like Jordan does, just like Matt LaFleur does. Everybody does. But what I know for a fact is that the people blaming Matt LaFleur have zero evidence that Matt LaFleur is the reason for this happening. Zero. Could it be something else? Yes. Are people willing to acknowledge those things? No. Which is nonsense. And then comes the thought of like, well, then just scheme it to him where he's like closer to the line of scrimmage. Okay, fine, but that's not what Matthew Golden is. For the record, we've done that and everybody threw a fit. Why are we only using Goldens for like wide receiver screens? Do you not remember that dialogue? How stupid. That's not what he should be used for. We shouldn't be using him for end arounds and wide receiver screens. Well, then what would you like to do exactly? Because when we don't throw it to him, the notion seems to be find any way to get the ball in his hand you can. And then when we find any way to get the ball in his hand that we can, everybody throws a fit. Because go figure, it doesn't actually work all that well. Because we're not playing to Matthew Golden's strengths. So again, I don't know 100% what the issue is. And by the way, when I say issue, I'm talking specifically about the Matthew Golden issue, not even the offensive issue. Maybe part of the problem is that there really isn't an offensive issue. And that the offense is kind of working. And so we don't need broad sweeping changes to replace our number one wide receiver with the rookie. As much as everybody would want that to happen. And you could disagree and that's fine, but I don't know. Have you seen how they've done in practice? I'm sure they try doing stuff with Golden. Maybe it's not going well. Maybe that's part of the reason we're not doing it. We don't know, and that's part of the problem. Then there was something else. Let me find it real quick. It was Packer Superfan tagged me in it. And it's one of those things that it's certainly not a good thing. Not that we think anything good has happened with the Matthew Golden thing. I mean, that's part of the issue is you don't need to show me this for me to know that it's not great. But Josh Norris over at Underdog Fantasy posted, "Let's hope Golden's rookie season follows the trajectory of his lone season at Texas." This isn't the exact one, but this is a secondary one. He started playing football on November 23rd. And so basically he just shows like his rookie year at Texas. The first 10 weeks, he was not very impactful as far as his I mean, he did actually have a bunch of touchdowns, but not very impactful in terms of his yardage and whatnot. And then again, I can't see the dates on here, but week 11, which would have been November 23rd, is when things started to explode for Matthew Golden. The main thing that I was looking for, that wasn't the one. So here is what was shared. This is actually Kyle Borgognoni over at Fantasy Football. It's all fantasy guys that are upset about Golden. First-round rookie wide receiver since 2010 without a receiving touchdown through the first 11 weeks. And it's a list of guys that are just not good at football. I also don't think the list is 100% accurate, but that's all right. It's close to accurate, I guess. Kevin White, Nelson Aguilar, Devontae Parker, who's actually not a terrible wide receiver, Josh Dotson, Laquan Treadwell, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross, N'Keal Harry, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, Traylon Burks, Matthew Golden. Packer Superfan was not happy to see this. Again, first of all, it shouldn't be surprising that not scoring a touchdown in the first 10 weeks or whatever is not great. And I'm not trying to pretend that everything's just fine necessarily, but I do want to point out for anybody that maybe has come across this about how terrible that would be, is that it stops, it says since 2010. The issue is, obviously, you can go back and find people that didn't score touchdowns as first-round picks in their rookie season through the first 11 weeks. I even have it as, even though I think it's 10, right? 11, whatever. That are pretty good football players. Shortly before that, you have Reggie Wayne, obviously a very good wide receiver. Did not have the best rookie season. He played 13 games, only started in 9, caught 27 passes for 345 yards and 0 touchdowns. Through his entire rookie season, 0 touchdowns. His second year, he got up to 716 yards and 4 touchdowns, still not very good. Then he got up to 838 and 7 touchdowns, which is okay, not great for a rookie. And then in 2004, which is year 4, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. And it was 1, 2, 3, get out of here. 4, 5, 6, you're 7, 8. You will not stop getting out of my way. I think 9 seasons from age 26 through 34 where he cracked 1,000 yards pretty much every season. He went down to 960 one year. But between like 1,200 and 1,500 pretty much every year. Similar story, not quite as good, but Santana Moss didn't really take off until year 3. His first season, I'm guessing a lot of it was due to injury, but he played 5 games, started in 0. Caught just 2 passes for 40 yards and 0 touchdowns. The next year, he was in 15 games, but only started 3, which is appalling. Caught 30 passes for 400 yards, and then it was 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns in season 3. And he was off to the races through from 2002 to 2010, basically. He played another 4 years where he wasn't as effective, but had a good season, good career. Plaxico Burress, in his 12 games, he only started 9, caught 22 passes for 273 yards, 0 touchdowns. The next year, he cracked 1,000 yards and pretty much did that for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. The funny thing is, though, there's another guy that is included in this list, and he goes by the name of Sterling Sharp. Maybe you've heard of him. Sterling Sharp, in his first 13 games, this is closer to what you're going to find with Golden, because he played in all 13 games, and he started in all 13 games. In those 13 games, he had 42 receptions for 618 yards and 0 touchdowns. So he went 13 games before he got his first touchdown. He ended the season with 791 yards and 1 touchdown. I know 1988 is not 2025, but it's not that shockingly different, as evidenced by the fact that just look at his remaining seasons. The very next year, he had 12 touchdowns. It's not like offenses were 1940s offenses, and then from 89 to 90, they became like 2010 offenses. It's not how that works. So he went from 700 yards and 1 touchdown to 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns. Again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's also not completely unprecedented. Also, should be noted that Javon Walker is not on the list. Also, if we look at just some of the more successful guys, Jordy Nelson at this point in his career, I know, again, not just first-round picks, but Jordy Nelson, one of the best we've had here in Green Bay, 268 yards and 1 touchdown. Antonio Freeman, 106 yards and 1 touchdown. Donald Driver, 31 yards and 1 touchdown. Randall Cobb had 255 yards and 1 touchdown. Robert Brooks, 92 yards and 1 touchdown. There were certainly plenty of opportunities for Golden to be on his first, second, third, fourth touchdown by now, but a lot of it was bad throws. So, again, putting that on, like, why is the offense broken? I mean, it was just, we're a couple inches away from Golden having 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's running a lot of deeper routes, and whenever he's targeted, a lot of the time, it's inaccurately thrown. That's just the reality. And if they were thrown better, he'd have a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns, and we wouldn't be talking about it. We don't need to call different plays. We don't need to put him in a different spot. Just in those few instances, and it's going to be a little bit more rare, we got to get on the right page here a little bit better. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about the Minnesota Vikings. All right, let's start super big picture here. Minnesota Vikings 2025 season. Once again, under Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips is the offensive coordinator, Brian Flores, defensive coordinator. They are currently 4-6. Obviously, this is a big fall off from last year, probably a little closer to what it was 2 years ago. They seem to kind of vacillate back and forth here from good year, bad year, good year, bad year. They have, first of all, not won 2 games in a row back-to-back. They started the season 3-2 with a win-loss, win-loss, win. Then they had their bye week, week 6. Since then, they are 1-4. Now, it's been a pretty tough road. Not necessarily with Chicago, but in that span, they've played the Eagles, the Chargers, the Ravens, and the Bears. They lost to the Eagles by 6. They lost to the Bears by 2. The Chargers, Ravens, those are pretty big losses, but they also beat Detroit by 3. Either way, at this point, the odds of making it to the playoffs are exceedingly low. You're in competition, first of all, with the rest of the NFC North, not to mention the rest of the NFC, considering you're probably not going to win. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's unlikely you win the NFC North. You're kind of fighting with the rest of the NFC for a wild card spot. It's pretty tough. There are some winnable games here. I would say probably even more so than what the Bears are looking at. Probably the Packers and Lions as well, if I had to guess. But they have Green Bay and Seattle. That's going to be relatively tough, depending on what you think of Green Bay. Washington is winnable. Dallas is winnable. The Giants are winnable. And then it's Detroit and Green Bay again. Those 3 games in the middle there get them to 7. That's obviously not enough. They would have to win all 3 of those. Dallas and the Giants, by the way, are on the road, which doesn't help. But would also have to win at least 2 games against Green Bay, Seattle, Detroit, Green Bay. Yes, they already beat Detroit once, but that was in Minnesota. Beating Detroit in Detroit is going to be a much bigger task. Not to mention, I think Detroit probably wins in Minnesota, 6 to 7 out of 10 times. In Detroit, it's probably closer to 8 or 9 out of 10 times. Green Bay, I would guess, at best you split. Seattle's playing as good a football as is out there, and that is going to be in Seattle, which makes it a lot more difficult. So, their playoff hopes are largely dashed. In fact, if we kick it over to the New York Times playoff predictor thing, a lot of people are making a big deal about the Vikings are playing for their playoff lives, and technically that's true. But they currently are operating with a 2% chance of being in the playoffs. Now, if they lose to the Packers, they're basically eliminated. I don't know when it becomes officially official, but losing this game means you pretty much have to win out the rest of the season. Not to mention you just gave the Packers a win, which makes it even more difficult. You're pretty much done. But they're pretty much done anyways. Again, the road is so unbelievably difficult, and the way that they're playing football is not conducive to winning football. They rank 22nd offensively in points, 27th in yards. On defense, they're 16th in points, 11th in yards. They're not top 10 in either of those categories. They're 31st offensively in turnovers, 24th in takeaways. They've turned the ball over 18 times, taken it away 9. They're 26th in net yards per attempt passing, 8th in yards per attempt rushing. They are 32nd in average time per drive, 32nd in average plays per drive, 29th in yards per drive, and 26th in points per drive. It's bad. If we flip over to DVOA, yes, I like to use it. Sorry again to any Bears fans who see this as like holy water. Maybe next week I'll kind of delve back into what exactly DVOA is and why I like it, but it's a good metric. Just freaking trust me, okay? If you're listening, it's for a reason, I'm hoping. Minnesota ranks 23rd with a negative 12.6% DVOA. Offensively, where they struggle the most, they rank 29th. Only Cleveland, Tennessee, and Las Vegas right now have worse offenses than Minnesota. But even defensively, which is kind of the strength, I guess, of the team, they rank 15th. So kind of dead average. According to DVOA, it is above average. They're at negative 2.8%, but just barely above average. The Packers are better than that in both metrics. Negative 5.4 on defense. Offense is, 12.3. It's also worth noting that their weighted DVOA, which kind of looks at the direction you're going, not just the overall season, they are slightly worse, which would point to the fact that they are getting slightly worse as a team, not better. It's subtle, but it is a thing. By the way, I don't think that there is a path for Minnesota to get eliminated this week. I think the Giants are the only team that can officially get eliminated this week. But it is, if they lose, it's going to be close. They might be a next week kind of a deal. Maybe 2 weeks, I don't know. They do have like 4 wins as opposed to some with 2. But again, their odds are pretty much 0. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and kind of go through a little bit more of an in-depth coaching tree schematic kind of thing. It's maybe a little less necessary with the Vikings because we're a little bit more familiar with them. But 2025 is a different year, and so there's going to be some slight changes and differences, and it's good to kind of have a up-to-date view of how things are looking. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so getting started here. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell, still the head coach. He's actually just extended in 2025. Offensive coordinator, again, is Wes Phillips. Defensive coordinator, Brian Flores. So the Vikings offense does run through O'Connell, although they have an offensive coordinator. Go ahead.
Someone is at the front door.
Thank you. O'Connell is another sort of Shanahan, McVay, that kind of a coaching tree. But there have been some pretty big changes recently as they've tried to shift more toward a run-focused offense with a goal toward being more physical up front. Again, this is kind of what it seems like everybody is trying to do. The Packers are trying to do it. Pretty much every opponent that we've looked at so far has tried to do this, whether it's been their identity from day one or whether they're shifting toward being more physical, bigger, stronger, run the ball, more tight ends, all that kind of stuff. The Vikings are not really different in that. How they go about doing it might be different, but the ultimate end goal is the same. We already talked about how they've added some offensive linemen. Obviously, it was a couple years ago they got Aaron Jones and whatnot, so they're trying to add overall to this group. McConnell flat out stated earlier in the season that his goal was to run the football. They wanted to control the game more, which is what running the football can do, as well as kind of take away the reliance on the pass game so much. Very smart to look ahead. I'm not going to say that was because they saw J.J. McCarthy. It's probably just what everybody's doing anyways. But it doesn't hurt. But he's trying to do a little bit of a balance. He doesn't want to turn his offense into sort of check down ball, but is trying to get the run to help the pass a little bit so they can still be a little bit aggressive downfield. That being said, he's also talked about because things are going south, and I don't know if this is more about J.J. McCarthy. I think it's about the entire team as a whole. But because things are going south, guys are kind of losing a little bit of their assignments and are tending more toward hero ball. He had mentioned that after their Week 11 loss to Chicago, that guys are sort of adapting a I'll make the play myself kind of a mentality. And so there's been a breakdown in discipline. And so rather than focusing on schematics like he normally does, he's kind of tried to become more of a, I don't know, team psychologist or something. Wes Phillips obviously is sort of the lesser of the two, but still plays an important role in the offense. He takes on more of a look at their offense from kind of a more granular standpoint, especially trying to do a lot of the heavy lifting in the run game, especially since they're, number one, it's becoming an emphasis, but number two, they're changing the offense and adding a lot of pieces, right? So they're adding running backs, they're changing the offensive line, and his job is to kind of bring this all together into one cohesive thing that works. Because there's been some struggles along the offensive line, his major contribution has been an increased usage in things like condensed formations, tight end alignments, all that kind of stuff to kind of help with the offensive alignment. Kind of go through item by item here. Like almost every team, they are a heavy 11 personnel team. I think that's almost every team's number one alignment. However, they do focus a lot on the condensed formations, trying to create a lot of traffic to get guys open with, rub routes and all those kinds of things. And again, they're still trying to attack deep down the field. They're just trying to do it off the run game, the play action, and all that kind of stuff. The biggest issue, obviously, has been J.J. McCarthy. Biggest issue that's been identified by the coaching staff is his lower body mechanics, which do take time. It's part of the reason why it's going to be hard to fully evaluate the guy at this point in time. I mean, Jordan Love went through something similar where footwork and everything was kind of a disaster, and then, by year 3-ish, he started to see things turn around from holy crap, this is bad, to this dude's actually really good. Specifically, when he's under pressure, he tends to widen his base, creating a platform that is too wide to rotate efficiently. He locks his hips, forces him to throw with his arms only, leading to a lot of these sailing passes and his inaccuracies. O'Connell has talked about how they're trying to make his drop-back posture repeatable, but in the chaos of live games, McCarthy often reverts to the bad habits. So that's going to be one of the major challenges, is teach him and then see if he can do it regularly. It's also one of the problems of throwing a guy out there as opposed to allowing them to sit. You know, it's kind of like if you're training somebody to fight and you give them a month worth of lessons and then you put them in an actual fight. I mean, that's going to suck. I mentioned that because it's on my mind, because I got one of my team members is about to fight here in a couple hours. And I couldn't go because it's in Cicero, Illinois, and I wanted to, but I couldn't freaking make it, so sorry about that, dude. Beyond the footwork issues, the slow processor thing, which might be a bigger problem, that's one of those that when that kind of becomes an issue, you know, with Justin Fields and even Caleb, I'm very skeptical about that. Maybe people can speed things up as they go along. It's one of those things that I've started to red flag pretty seriously, especially if we're talking draft prospects. If they have a slow processor, I kind of just don't want anything to do with it. His average time to throw is 3.04 seconds, second highest mark in the NFL, and a lot of that is being attributed to his just slow processor. Part of it, though, is also he's kind of a big play hunter, kind of bypassing the checkdowns and trying to shoot it down the field. The run game, as I said, is not terrible. If we go back and look at it, I think they were at, 8th? Yeah, 8th in yards per attempt at 4.7, so it is kind of working. But they're not getting a massive amount of help from the injuries that have happened on their offensive line. They're starting to get some guys back, as we already talked about, but losing guys like Christian Darrisaw and Will Fries and whatnot is going to complicate things. So that's kind of the situation right now with the offense overall. They want to establish the run. They want the offensive line to help lead the way along with some veteran running backs so that we can take some pressure off of the passing game, so that we can when we use it, be more successful in, let's say, aggressive passing, if that makes sense. So it's not like we want to run and do dink and dunk. It's like, no, we want to pass aggressively, just less often. And you can do that if you can run the ball successfully, / have a good enough quarterback. But the biggest issue with that has been the quarterback. On the defensive side, under Brian Flores, he's been there now. This is his 3rd season, so you got some continuity there. Very aggressive defense. We've talked about how different coordinators, some of them will focus on kind of being static, but doing the job well, and other guys are focused on, we're going to confuse the living crap out of you. Flores is a confuse the crap out of you guy. With that said, that doesn't seem like it was the intent of the season. I think coming into it, like a lot of teams, I mean, there's always that on the back end, but at least on the front end, the intent was to just bring 4. We want to win with a 4-man front, drop 7, and win that way. Whether they were kind of full of crap or if it's just because it's not really working, which it hasn't been. Flores is kind of stuck to his roots as a very blitz-happy defense, which is good and bad. It's good that they can't win with 4 because that's a disaster when a team can do that. But it is also pretty scary when you got a guy like Flores dialing up blitzes. If you can handle it, there's going to be space on the back end. But you have to pick up the blitz, which the Packers have struggled with at times, which relies on communication, quarterback, offensive line. And also you have to be able to find the guy that's open and delivered. If you can do that, you can pick this crap apart. If you can't, they can absolutely wreak havoc on you. And so what you see from Flores is what we've actually seen from the Vikings for a lot of, even prior to Flores, this sort of, mugged up where you got everybody kind of up on the offensive line, 5-6 defenders standing up to confuse the offensive line, blitzing schemes. They call it a Bengal front. And so, we've done this a little bit. I think the Packers have kind of, with Micah especially, tried to get back to bringing just 4, which we've done pretty successfully, which is great. But it's not a super unfamiliar thing where when you do that, the offensive line has to kind of simplify to be able to account for everybody. And then whether they blitz somebody or not, you've still already done some of the damage. Again, they generally are, and by generally I just mean at a higher rate than usual. It's like 42% or something, which is one of the highest in the NFL, the blitz rates. But the other idea is you don't know who. So you bring 6 guys up on the line or whatever it is. 4 or 5 of them come. If 5 comes, you got a blitz. But it's simulated pressure is what it is. We want to force the quarterback into a max protect and then just have a 4-man rush, or even 5 for that matter. But again, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, who we already talked about, that was supposed to help them just rush 4, and they've gotten away from that. I'm assuming because it really wasn't working very well, but it might also just be because it's Flores and he's like, screw this is what I do. Beyond that, the bigger issue is the run defense. There was a big regression in their ability to stop the run. Last year, they had one of the best run defenses in the entire NFL. I mean, they were 5th overall in points, but 4th in yards per attempt. This year, they're at 14th in yards per attempt. Granted, not, bottom 10 or anything like that. It's still top half, but signifies a pretty big drop-off for the Vikings defense. One of the structural flaws that has been identified is Flores' scheme is more of a gap shooting thing, kind of similar to what the Packers are as far as their defensive tackles. And so going out and getting Allen and Hargrave, who are penetrators and not space eaters, when they shoot a gap and miss, there is no second line of defense. No, I mean, there's linebackers, but there's no second line of the big bodies that are there. And so the linebackers are kind of left exposed with offensive linemen and running back kind of coming down their throat as the defensive tackles in the backfield. If and when they don't make plays, it creates problems. Opponents have ruthlessly exploited this by running gap scheme power runs directly at the interior, which is what the Packers have been doing, which isn't great, but in this case, it's kind of what's been working against the Vikings. As far as the secondary, they're kind of working on a razor's edge. With the heavy blitzing, it doesn't give them as much opportunity to have extra bodies in coverage. And so you do get some of this man-to-man coverage, guys left on an island, cover 0, cover 1 type of stuff, which leaves them, again, with some potential to be exploited. And so, if you think about it in those terms, there's obviously a lot of specifics here with this team, but if you think about it similar to like Kansas City or whatever, where we're going to blitz you, and then we're going to play man-to-man, and you're going to have to beat our guys before our blitzers, pass rushers get to you. That's kind of the situation we're going to be dealing with, which means what we need are the receivers to be able to win their man-to-man matchups. Primarily, in my mind, I'm thinking Watson, Golden. Don't have Tucker. Dobbs, not my favorite in that situation. Reed not playing in this game. Those guys generally are running deeper routes. I'm not saying we have to fully change everything, but maybe if we have them running a little bit more shallow, running across the field type stuff, things to kind of dial up some quicker passing plays. And you got to be careful when I say things like that, because if it's just going to be wide receiver screens and the linebackers can just tee off, going in that direction, I don't know that that's going to be the best thing either. But I think that's primarily what we're looking for. And again, it is a thing that can be exploited. I think my only concern with it is it kind of requires a high level of play and consistency, and that's what the Packers have struggled with. Again, if you try running this sort of defensive scheme against, the best team in football with the, most intelligent quarterback and run it against like Devontae Rodgers or whatever, they're going to freaking pick you apart. The offensive line is going to block you up, and then Rodgers is going to identify what you're doing. He's going to communicate it to the receivers, and he's going to have the right guy for the right, and it's just going to eat you alive. The stuff that Rodgers would struggle with is the defenses that can beat you with 4. That's where it gets complicated. This kind of stuff, not the most complicated if you can hold up. And again, we have the talent to do it. I just worry about the consistency across the board. Jordan's going to be under pressure. He's going to have to make consistently good decisions and good throws within those decisions, and then we need guys to get open, to catch the ball when it comes to you. If you can do that, there's explosives out there. There's big plays to be made. But, you got to be able to make that happen. And then on the other side, we're going to need the defense to make sure that they play a solid game because, again, this is their weakness, is their offense, especially their pass game. So you can't let them dominate you on the ground. You also cannot have stupid lapses to where, there's no pass rush and also, we let somebody wide open, because as bad as McCarthy has been, I'm sure he can, sometimes he'll airmail it, but he'll be able to hit wide open guy. There is always a level of, yes, they struggle, but if you're this bad, they're going to beat you. This is a winnable game. This is a game that the Packers should win. They are the better team. If they can play their, I don't even want to say best version of football, but if they can just show up and play at their level of talent, they win the game. But if you have a terrible performance from the offensive line, if we have a lot of penalties, a lot of drops, if our defense can't stop the run, if we can't generate pressures outside of Micah Parsons, who's being double-teamed the whole game, it's going to cause problems. So we need people to step up. And this late in the season, I don't think I'm asking too much. We need to start seeing some consistency from some of these guys. Some of these guys maybe get a pass. Others, no. There's no more passes. We can't have Dobbs starting to have his worst games at this point in the season. This is when everybody needs to start having their best games and starting to have more consistency and those kinds of things pending injuries and whatnot. So, it's frickin' go time. This is the time of year where a loss to the Vikings can be pretty catastrophic for your season. So, can't have it. Anywho, we'll dig into some of that tomorrow, looking at, obviously if we win, if we lose, percentages and all that fun stuff. One final thing, I'll mention this. I know there's already 60,000 websites and projects I've been working on that I've tried to direct you to or whatever. There was another one, and I think I've talked about it very briefly. I just thought it was kind of funny. So I've been doing this for years. This way of predicting my scores. I've used the same formula forever. It's basically just DVOA and applying it to the team total. So if you have DVOA, you could do this yourself. It's not that big of a deal. It is kind of time consuming and annoying, which is why I, with the help of AI, just had built a site where I can just import all the data and it just happens instantly. This is the first week that it's been available, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was kind of broken because the very first game, Bills-Texans, I'm thinking, okay, Bills are going to dominate, and it predicted the Texans win, and I'm like, well, this is stupid. The score prediction was 22-20, specifically 19.7 to 21.6. Texans win, and that's with the Bills expected to win by 5.5 points. I had the Texans winning by 2. Texans won 23-19. So I was 0.7 points away from the Bills' exact score and 1.4 points away from the exact Texans score. So I will place a link to this. I had mentioned how I was going to add some way to donate money or whatever, but nobody's going to do it. So I'll maybe do that another time. If you want to go play with it, I'm also assuming not a lot of people will use it, so it does cost me a little bit of money every time somebody pulls the data, but it's not a ton. So if you wanted to look at it for the upcoming games and for some possible bet opportunities, very simple site here where you can just, I've only got 2 sites on here. I'll see if we can do more. It's MyBookie and DraftKings, where it kind of pulls their data in. But if you want to play around with it, it is available for you. And actually, DraftKings is not working, so we'll just stick with MyBookie for now until I can get that working. But I'll put the link to that in the show notes. That's it. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.